The desert wind howled across the barren landscape as the sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty trail. It was 1883, and the Arizona Territory was as unforgiving as it was beautiful. This is a story about abandonment, survival, and the unexpected kindness of a stranger that would change everything. Maria Santiago had been traveling for 3 days when her water ran out. She was fleeing from a life of violence, escaping a man who had brought her nothing but pain. In her arms, wrapped in a tattered shawl, was her 6-month-old daughter, Elena. The baby's cries had grown weaker with each passing hour, and Maria knew she was running out of time. As the 4th day dawned, Maria collapsed near a dried riverbed. Her lips were cracked and bleeding, her vision blurred. She looked down at her baby, whose tiny face was red from the heat, eyes barely open. Maria knew she wouldn't make it another day. But perhaps, just perhaps, someone might find the baby if she left her somewhere visible. With trembling hands and tears streaming down her face, Maria placed Elena inside a burlap sack she had been carrying. She cushioned it with what little cloth she had, creating a makeshift cradle. She positioned the sack under the sparse shade of a mesquite tree near the trail, hoping against hope that someone would pass by before it was too late. Maria kissed her daughter's forehead one last time, whispering promises she knew she couldn't keep, and then stumbled away into the desert. She couldn't bear to watch, couldn't bear to stay. She told herself it was Elena's only chance. 2 hours later, a lone cowboy named Jack Thornton was making his way to the nearest town. Jack was a weathered man of 45, with a face lined by years of hard living, and eyes that had seen too much suffering. He worked cattle ranches throughout the territory, never staying in one place too long, never getting too close to anyone. As his horse plodded along the trail, Jack heard something that made him pull on the reins. It was faint, almost lost in the wind, but unmistakable, a baby's cry. Jack dismounted quickly, his hand instinctively moving to his revolver. Indians, bandits. In this territory, you never knew what trouble awaited. But as he approached the mesquite tree, he saw the burlap sack moving slightly, and the cries grew louder. He knelt down and carefully opened the sack. Inside was the smallest baby he had ever seen, her face red and tear-stained, her tiny fists waving in distress. For a moment, Jack just stared, completely unprepared for this discovery. Then, the baby's eyes opened, and she looked directly at him. Her crying stopped for just a moment, and in a voice barely above a whisper, she made a sound that pierced Jack's hardened heart. Mama. It wasn't a real word, of course. Babies that age don't talk. But to Jack, in that moment, it sounded exactly like a cry for her mother. And something inside him, something he thought had died years ago when he lost his own wife and child to fever, suddenly came alive again. Jack gently lifted the baby from the sack. She was dangerously dehydrated, her lips dry, her skin hot to the touch. He had to act fast. He carried her to his horse and retrieved his canteen, carefully dribbling water onto her lips. The baby's mouth opened eagerly, and she began to suck at the moisture. Easy there, little one, Jack murmured, his rough voice surprisingly gentle. Not too fast now. He looked around the desert, searching for any sign of who might have left her. He saw footprints leading away into the wasteland, small prints that could only belong to a woman. The tracks wandered erratically, the desperate path of someone near death. Jack faced a choice. He could follow those tracks, try to find the mother, but that would take hours, maybe days, and the baby needed help immediately. The nearest town was 6 hours away, but there was a homestead about 2 hours north where a family lived. They would have milk, supplies, shelter. He made his decision. The baby's life came first. Jack fashioned a sling from his bedroll and secured the baby against his chest. Every few minutes during that 2-hour ride, he would offer her small sips of water. The baby seemed to understand that this stranger was helping her, and she clutched at his shirt with her tiny fingers. You're a fighter, aren't you? Jack said softly as he rode. That's good. You're going to need that out here. As they traveled, Jack found himself talking to the baby, telling her about the sky, the desert, the mountains in the distance. He told her about his own daughter, Sarah, who would have been about 5 years old now, if she had lived. He hadn't spoken her name aloud in 3 years. When they finally reached the Henderson homestead, Jack's urgent knocking brought Mary Henderson to the door. She was a kind woman in her 30s, mother to 3 children of her own. Good Lord. Jack Thornton, what have you got there? She exclaimed. Found her abandoned on the trail, Jack explained. She needs milk. needs care. Can you help? Asterisk Mary didn't hesitate. She took the baby inside, and within minutes, Alina was being fed warm milk from a bottle, while Mary's own baby had been drinking from. The transformation was remarkable. Color returned to Alina's cheeks, and her cries turned from distressed to merely hungry. Asterisk Jack stood awkwardly in the doorway, hat in his hands, watching Mary work her maternal magic. He should leave, he thought. His job was done, but he couldn't make his feet move toward the door. Asterisk, you saved her life, Mary said, looking up at him with admiration. Another hour in that heat, and she would have been gone. Asterisk Jack nodded silently. Mary studied him carefully, seeing something in his eyes that made her pause. Asterisk, you planning to ride on? She asked. Asterisk Jack opened his mouth to say yes, but the word wouldn't come. Instead, he found himself asking, what will happen to her? Asterisk, Mary sighed. We'll care for her until we can get word to the territorial marshal. Maybe they can find her mother, or find her a home. There's an orphanage in Tucson, but it's overcrowded. Truth is, Jack, her prospects aren't good. Asterisk Jack looked down at the baby, now sleeping peacefully in Mary's arms. That tiny sound echoed in his memory. Mama. Whether she had said it or not, he had heard it, and he had heard the cry of his own daughter in it. Asterisk, what if I kept her? The words came out before Jack could stop them. Asterisk, Mary's eyes widened. You, Jack, you're a drifter. No offense, but a baby needs a home, stability, a mother. Asterisk, I know, Jack said, his voice rough with emotion, but I could provide that. I've got money saved. I could buy a piece of land, build a house. I've been thinking about settling down anyway. It was a lie, but as he said it, Jack realized it was a lie he wanted to become truth. Mary looked skeptical, but not unkind. A baby is a tremendous responsibility, especially for a single man. Are you sure you're ready for that? Asterisk Jack looked at Alina, sleeping peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. He thought about the moment he found her, about that sound she made, about the way her tiny fingers had gripped his shirt. He thought about his wife and daughter, gone but not forgotten, and about the emptiness he had carried for 3 years. Asterisk, no, he admitted. I'm not sure, but I'm sure I can't ride away and leave her to an uncertain fate. She called for her mama, and her mama's gone. Maybe I can't be that, but I can be something. I can be there. Asterisk, Mary smiled softly. Her mama's gone. Jack, how do you know that? Asterisk, Jack described the wandering footprints disappearing into the desert, prints that showed someone stumbling, dying. Mary's face grew sad, but she nodded. Asterisk, the mother left her here hoping someone would find her, Mary said. She gave her daughter a chance at life, and you found her. Maybe that means something. Asterisk, over the next 3 days, Jack stayed at the Henderson homestead, learning how to care for a baby. Mary taught him how to hold her properly, how to feed her, how to change her. Her husband Tom helped Jack draft a letter to the territorial marshal, explaining the situation and Jack's intention to take responsibility for the child. Asterisk, during those 3 days, Jack transformed. The hardened drifter began to soften, smiling as Alina grasped his finger, laughing when she made funny faces. He named her Hope, because that's what she had given him. Asterisk, on the 4th day, a Mexican woman arrived at the homestead, barely alive, asking about a baby. It was Maria Santiago, who had somehow survived her desert wandering and made her way back, driven by desperate love for her daughter. Asterisk, the reunion was tearful. Maria collapsed when she saw Alina alive and healthy. Jack helped her inside, and Mary tended to her, while Maria held her daughter, sobbing with relief and joy. Asterisk, but as Maria recovered, a painful reality emerged. She had nothing, no money, no home, no way to provide for Alina. She had been fleeing violence, and returning to her old life would put both her and Alina in danger. Asterisk, Jack made an offer that surprised everyone, including himself. He would help them both. He would buy that land he had been thinking about, build a house big enough for a family. Maria could work as his housekeeper, help raise Alina, and they would create a safe home together, not as husband and wife, but as partners in giving this child the life she deserved. Asterisk, Maria looked at this stranger who had saved her daughter's life, who was now offering to save hers too. She saw kindness in his weathered face, sincerity in his eyes. She agreed. 6 months later, on a small ranch outside of Prescott, Arizona, Jack Thornton watched Alina take her first steps. Maria clapped with joy, and Jack felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt like he was home.